Welcome to the DFS Express Podcast, your stop for daily fantasy sports talk, including slate breakdowns and industry commentary. Let's go to the host of our show, the Daily Fantasy Sniper.
The NFL Scouting Report is back for one last time this season. It is, of course, Super Bowl 54. It is, of course, a showdown slate. If you haven't heard, the Kansas City Chiefs are a 1.5-point favorite over the San Francisco 49ers down in Miami. The game total is 55. Before we dig in how to attack this for DraftKings and FanDuel, just do the intro that I always do. Guys, please like, comment, subscribe to the podcast. I appreciate everybody who watches and listens. Give me a follow on Twitter at sniper_DFS. That's enough of the intro this week. I'm too excited to talk about the Super Bowl. Now, showdown slates are really tricky for a variety of reasons, just variance within variance. The biggest thing that people overlook before we dig into the plays and what I'm thinking for this game is to build correlative lineups. If you're going to put... For me, I don't like double defenses. I don't think that's going to win you a showdown slate very rarely. So if you're going to go with, a bunch of 49ers in your lineup and in the captain spot, you probably shouldn't play the Chiefs defense. It doesn't make sense there. Now, if you're going to have a receiver in the captain spot or the MVP spot, depending on what site you're playing, you're going to want to probably roster the quarterback. Unless you think they run for a touchdown for some reason. It's just there's only so many points to go around. I build off of my 1.5 times player, whoever that is in that lineup, and make a lineup that fits a game script. Don't just start plugging guys in and go, okay, if San Francisco's going to win 24-10, how does that game play out? General guidelines for me, one defense in a lineup. GPPs, I only like to play one kicker. I don't like to go double kicker. Cash games, if you want to try and get some floor with both kickers, sure, that is an option. And generally, you want to put quarterbacks in cash games, but we'll talk about Jimmy Garoppolo in a second. Obviously, didn't have to throw any passes in the NFC Championship game. So we'll see how that works out here. So I did mention 55 total. How do I see this game playing out? For me, and this is comes down to who you're picking for the game is where you're going to start. Oh, before I give you my player picks, the one last thing I think is really important. If you're going to MME, if you're going to mass multi-enter, even if it's 20 or all the way up to 150, for me, build core. I hate guys, and you hear me talk in MMA all the time, I hate to overhedge. Come up with 150, you can probably get 4 or 5 captains, and I would just say, okay, I think one of these few players are gonna be the right captain to win everything, and build your combinations from there. I'm gonna play 20 on this slate. I'm gonna have 2 captains, 3 tops. Because if I'm right, why am I gonna spread it all around? That's just the way I approach it. I'm playing to be right. And I'll play for a couple different game scripts. Okay, this game in particular. Of course, really interesting is Kansas City has gotten off to slow starts in the playoffs in the last few games. In San Francisco, the best defense in the league, period, full stop. On the other side, San Francisco, generally, it's George Kittle. Garoppolo has done some this year, but Kittle's gets most of the targets in that offense, and then the running backs, and that's where you want to attack Kansas City is with running backs. The issue, as I already hear some people saying, is which running back do I take? Because last week it was Raheem Mostert going insane. 2 weeks before that it was Tevin Coleman going insane, or 2 and 3 weeks. The last game and 2 games ago. So. I mean, by that logic, is it Matt Breida time? Probably not. But, there's a running back by committee situation going on mostly between Mostert and Coleman happening in San Francisco. And you have to make some decisions that way. I will say if San Francisco is going to keep running the ball and there's a similar game script to last week, you could have lineups with both Coleman and Mostert. Sure. I don't hate that approach at all. I think people are going to really focus on the running backs here, and where you can get different is, Jimmy Garoppolo put up no points because of that. As I mentioned, he didn't have to. They just steamrolled the Packers. I think Garoppolo is going to go a little under-owned, and that's where you can get Deebo Samuel or Sanders and Kittle. I will say Kittle is definitely my favorite. I think I'm leaning towards Sanders and GPP because I think Samuel is going to get more ownership. And between Mostert and Coleman, I need to honestly look at the prices, which I'm going to pull up real quick on DraftKings. Mostert is $9,400. Tevin Coleman is $6,400. I mean, just the savings alone, I have to, I like Kittle. I like Coleman a bunch. Obviously, you can tell I'm playing Kittle. I said his name by accident. I've said it like 7 times in this podcast already. So that's where I'm looking for San Francisco. Kansas City, they've started so slow the last few weeks that if they do that again, I think this San Francisco defense is going to be a real issue. I think San Francisco is going to take care of the ball, by the way. That's going to be their goal. Obviously, I think they'll be more conservative unless, and if this game starts getting out of hand or if Kansas City pulls ahead, that's when San Francisco will open up the offense and where the Kansas City defense could come into play. Personally, I think if Kansas City wins this game, it's going to be a shootout. And if San Francisco wins this game, I think the under will hit. I don't think San Francisco will be able to withstand a shootout with Kansas City. So just in terms of game scripts, I'm not going to have a ton, even though I like Kittle. I'm not sure how much I'm going to have him in the captain or MVP slot because that's a receiving type of game. You can game stack receivers on both sides. I think if San Francisco wins, I'm more likely to go Mostert, Coleman in the defense. And if my builds where Kansas City wins, where I think it's a shootout, you can go Kelsey, Hill, those guys, and run it back with Kittle on the other side, just not as an MVP if the game does get out of hand. Kansas City, if they win, like I said, if you have them winning this game, you're on the favorite. Mahomes is obviously, he's everything in that offense. I'm going to have Mahomes pretty much everywhere because if they're behind, they're going to keep throwing the ball. Give me Patrick Mahomes in all formats. I think he's a viable captain as well, an MVP, because he can run for a touchdown for sure. I want to look at the price on Sammy Watkins. Had a decent game last time out. I think he had a big game last time out, if I remember right. Yeah, 27.4 points, 7,000 is a little elevated because he was bad for a bunch of weeks before that. But Tyreek Hill is 11,000. So that stack of Mahomes and Hill is expensive. And Damian Williams, 9,800. It's going to be hard to get a ton of the Kansas City guys in. And it's real hard for me to justify that price because of how good San Francisco is. I'm on the San Francisco side. I think they win this game. I think the under hits. If you're asking me for a score prediction, I think it's 24-17. I think the game will be a slow first quarter and eventually things will pick up. But Kansas City's not going to be able to turn it on as much as they had the last few weeks against this San Francisco offense. The good thing about Kansas City is even though the prices are up, their production is really mashed together between those guys I just mentioned. Mahomes, Williams, Tyreek, Watkins, and Kelsey. It actually makes things kind of hard. To win a GPP, you're going to probably have to find a scrub or just somebody really under-owned to do some damage. I will say if you're going to build... if you're building those type of lineups, it's Robinson and Hardman, 26 and 2,200. If you saw me typing, those are the guys to target in the Kansas City build as a guy who can, guys who could pop in with a touchdown. I'm looking at target numbers real quick. Robinson gets between 2 and 4 targets pretty consistently. On the Hardman side, a little less. So I would lean towards Robinson just for that reason. And in terms of San Francisco and looking for a cheap option there, I mentioned his name earlier. I think Matt Breida might be my guy. I know the other two running backs have had the big weeks and carried them through the playoffs, but they're making a lot of that running back by committee approach. He's 3,200. He could pop in with a touchdown. That really, it wouldn't stun me that much. I think that's about as cheap as I'm willing to go for San Francisco. Kendrick Bourne is a little more expensive than that. He's a guy who can pop in. He's very hit or miss, total GPP guy, but I just have this feeling Breed is going to score a touchdown. I just call it a gut feeling. So to circle back, the most important thing, though, on this slate is to build those correlative lineups. I can't stress that enough. Have game scripts. And my other piece of advice, don't overspread yourselves. Just, pick 2 or 3 captains and build that way. That's what I have for the final NFL scouting report of the year. NASCAR starts up in a couple weeks. I will cover Daytona. And we're going to get in a pretty good cycle of NASCAR, soccer, and probably most importantly for most of my listeners, where I started the MMA videos. Those will keep coming. Going to do 3 podcasts a week is the goal. I do go on vacation in 2 weeks, so hoping to, have some canned episodes ahead of time to release where I talk about other things that aren't slate specific. I'm going to do a lineup build episode. I had a little bit of technical difficulties trying to record one. I am going to do that where I go through my bankroll management process and how I enter contests and do a sample of that. Have another interview lined up for a preview of the NASCAR season with Taco DFS. So things like that. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Check out the interview I just recently did with Big Marley. Some good content there, fun discussion, and MMA. I'm going to keep doing the live streams on my YouTube channel, The Daily Fantasy Sniper, watching pay-per-views. I will live stream those, chat, sweat, hopefully make some money. Last week we had GQ on as he took down $7,000. So that's what I got for Super Bowl 54. Enjoy the game. Enjoy the wings. Make some money. I'll see you next time.